The sound of silence. I wonder if we have the speaker here in the room with us. Nigel. Oh, I can hear you. Okay, good.
I wanted to watch. I thought it was going to be good.
Oh, that's interesting. Did you have your coffee, guys? All rest, relaxed? Some people went to the workshop. I understood it was fabulous and very interactive and lots of work put in it. Okay, good. Glad that you're holding your excitement. Very, very happy to see that. So, Nigel, would you mind...
They told me not to stand here because nobody could see me, so I thought it was the perfect place to stand.
It is actually a very cute place. Is this the 24, is it like the number of your years? In work, in professional work. So, Nigel, just a few questions for you before I let you go and give you to the beasts. They're going to tear you apart with their questions.
I know. I've heard a lot about Serbians.
Yeah. Oh, are you here for the first time?
Yes.
A virgin?
Yes.
Until yesterday?
Completely.
Okay, good.
I told my wife that.
So how was it?
It's very good. I watched a few videos on Serbia, and I was saying earlier on when we were talking about this, and apparently Serbia's like Europe without the bullshit.
So I think the first person who clapped, they are actually the author of the video.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Bleep, edit.
Good. So, Nigel, you mentioned the word BS?
Yeah, bullshit. Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another BS as well.
Yeah?
Batshit.
Okay.
Okay.
And are you going to talk about shit today?
A lot of shit.
Oh, okay.
Including free shit.
Like the trinity of shit?
Yes, the trinity of shit.
Okay, good. So it will be easy to memorize at least.
It'll be memorable for sure.
And you will be also delivering a workshop a bit later,
right?
Yeah,
4:15. I'll talk about that in a second.
You'll mention that, okay. And did I understand right that you're based in Dallas and you just flew in from Dallas?
Correct, yesterday, so I'm a little bit weary.
Yeah, it doesn't show. You have a nice facial cream.
You're very
Congratulations
kind.
to your wife on choosing the right product for you. Anything you'd like to share with us? There is like this huge, gigantic, very important geopolitical date that happens in the States.
Oh, you mean November the 5th, when the British burn an effigy of a Catholic conspirator and teach the children to burn these effigies and then celebrate afterwards with fireworks? Or the election.
I meant a contemporary event. Yeah.
Or you mean the election in the USA?
Yes.
They're both the same thing.
Oh. So the effigy burning, is that the Guy Fawkes thing?
That's correct.
I'm not sure the audience is very well aware. If
every
you can
November
do it in a sentence.
Yeah, every November the 5th in England, we commemorate the prevention of a terrorist plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament hundreds of years ago. And we do that by teaching children to burn an effigy of the conspirator and then celebrate. Go Britain, Brexit.
Good. So I will not ask you about Kamala or Trump, but is the situation heated in the States?
It's certainly interesting, and I live in Texas. Mm-hmm. So there's only one colour in Texas.
Sort of reddish?
Ish. Unless you're in a city and they're just, you're in a city because there's lots of homeless people. So...
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, that's an American thing.
I will let you hit the audience.
No, they don't like me already now. All right, are we ready? Are we off? Well, you've already counted me down. I haven't got time for this. My mic went off. You turned the wrong one off. Or maybe you turned the right one off. These books here, if you go and visit the Agile Serbia desk upstairs, I've given them some copies of the book, and they're all signed by the different authors, myself and my co-authors. But if you visit the Agile Serbia desk, they've got a spinning wheel. They'll do a competition. So if you want a copy of the book for free, a $79.95 value, go see the Agile Serbia folks. All right, let's talk a bit about later on. At 4:15, Chris and myself, he's down there in the audience, we're going to do this bit of a workshop later on. So if you like music like this... you're all sitting completely still. So obviously nobody likes dubstep, but if you like crazy stuff and you want to go batshit crazy and you like free shit, so that's batshit and free shit in the same sentence, then come along to the workshop about 4:15. We're going to do some crazy stuff. We've only got room, there's a room for about 60 people in the room, but only room for about 40 people actually doing the workshop activity. But if you come along, there's some free shit you might win, and you will go batshit crazy, trust me. So, let's move on. The convincing game. This is Agile nowadays. This is when you go and your companies ask experts to come in, tell them what's wrong. You spend a bunch of time learning them from the people, understanding everything that's wrong with the organization, and you give your report, and then they tell you why you're wrong. So I'm no longer in the convincing game. I'm no longer in this game of convincing I'm right, you're wrong. But this is an interesting sort of interlude into what we're going to talk about, which is the problem. We don't have a methodology problem. It's not about frameworks. It's not about methods, tools, techniques, approaches. What we have is a behavior problem. We have plenty of tools you can choose from. You're not short of tools. You're not short of methods or frameworks. But you are having some behavioral issues. And that does start with leadership, senior leaders. And then we've got the transformation myth. We write about this in the book, but this suggests applying a universal framework will transform your organization, both operationally and culturally, into something that ensures faster delivery while creating a harmonious working culture previously unobtainable. That's bullshit, by the way. So, the Agile Manifesto is a philosophy, that's all it is. Nothing wrong with it, it's perfectly well written. It's a good philosophy if you choose to follow it or align to it. But it's been beautified and co-opted as this primary approach for organizational change, something it was never ever designed for. What we actually have is a cultural issue in a lot of organizations, but the challenge is culture is a product of our behaviors. You can't implement a cultural transformation. In fact, the word transformation is the wrong word anyway. And your culture emerges based on how we behave and act. The other thing is you can't scale Agile. And I've been doing this for a while now, so I've sort of figured out we can't scale Agile. This is the problem. There's no standard approach. There's no one-size-fits-all for every organization. The illusion is scaling frameworks. We heard a lot about those from our first speaker this morning, and I liked his approach. There's many patterns, techniques, tools, approaches, but context determines the approach you use. What you use in human resources won't work, maybe in software development, won't work if you're drilling for oil. And then there's this thing between agile and agility is emergent. It's how we act and behave towards the work and towards each other that creates the emergence of agility, as opposed to just following some blind framework. So let's talk about context and types of work. So, context is defined in the dictionary as the set of circumstances or facts that surround a particular situation or set of conditions, the organizational environment or landscape. So the challenge is that when we go into most organizations and I talk to them, they do things like this, what we call a case-based approach. So they choose a framework, usually something with the word safe in it. The outsource deal is signed. Everybody gets certified. Everybody got PDF certificates in here? There's plenty of places to buy them if you want more. Please stop sending money to Dean Leffingwell. Agile PMO governance is formed. That's another oxymoron. And then we outsource the accountability to the vendor. This is typically what happens. The vendor comes in and says, we did it in the hospital, therefore it'll work in the bank. We'll just copy-paste it. That's case-based approaches, and they don't work in complex systems because no one size fits all. If you're working in a bank, it's completely different than if you're working in the oil fields in West Texas. The same again if you're making cars or working at a hospital or whatever context you're in. And this matters because we're in a complex adaptive system. Complex adaptive systems are dynamic. They're continuously evolving and changing based on external forces. Now, if you don't know what a complex adaptive system is, take a selfie or look in a mirror, and the person you're looking at is a complex adaptive system. You operate without central control, despite what the Republican Party in the US may tell you about COVID vaccinations. So, complex adaptive systems scale by decomposition to the lowest level of coherent granularity. That means the smallest component that still makes sense. If you descale Scrum, the daily Scrum would be an example of something that still makes sense when it's descaled. And then through recombination, not imitation. So not case-based, copy-paste, but by recombination, different methods, tools, techniques, and approaches that suit your context. Chefs are required. If you've got Scrum Masters that use talking sticks, please fire them. Bad, evil, burn in hell stuff. So, we need chefs. We don't want recipes. We're not following a specific recipe because tools have context. Two great tools are on the screen, a hammer and a toothbrush. They both work very well when used in context, but if you confuse the context, unacceptable or unavoidable consequences may happen. And this is the concept of bounded applicability. This comes from Dave Snowden, a good friend of mine in complexity thinking. Basically, it means that all tools have limits. This remote presenter is a great thing for pointing at the screen and moving my slides on. It's not very good for eating a bowl of soup. That's bounded applicability. Very good tool when used in context. So if you start using things like Scrum out of context, you'll expect different results. And just because the tool works doesn't mean it's effective. Now, we've developed some new tools in combination with Dave Snowden and a few other practitioners. I just put these slides in earlier this morning when I was thinking about this tool called Hexy. You can Google it, you can go find some keynotes we've done on it, but this tool is now starting to become available. We've worked with scrum.org to develop a whole set of what we call hexes or hexagonal cards for Scrum, and then when used with different practitioner cards, and they exist from my company, but also from other contributors now, you can start to combine methods and techniques, tools and approaches to find what works best in your context. And even in your own company, you'll have multiple different contexts across the organization. No one context will be exactly the same as another. So you can take a look at those. You'll find some details on the web. So let's talk about constraints. The theory of constraints defines a constraint as anything that limits the system from a higher level of performance. And if you've read Goldratt's The Goal and others like that, you'll understand a little bit about the theory of constraints. But these are the things that companies struggle to get rid of. These are the things that none of the scaling frameworks address. None of the Scrum or Agile methods address this. Reducing or getting rid of handoffs. Every time you hand something off, you're putting waste in the system. Dependencies. Internal, external dependencies, different vendors, different departments. Every time you move things around the system and it's dependent on something, you increase weighting. And this is one of my favorite slides I made years ago. It talks about the managers managing the managers that manage the managers that are managing the managers that manage the people who do the work. The value is created here. What we tend to do in organizations is create these large hierarchies of giving permission, giving approval, giving authority. These are the things you need to be dealing with in a company if you want to have that emergent agility. And this slide, how do we remove the need for you? If you're an executive, a leader, a manager, you may be in the way of the people doing the work. How do we remove the need for you? I don't mean fire you. I mean, how do we empower those people that report to you to be able to do their work more effectively? And then we talk about reducing the power distance index. This comes from some research from Holland, from Hert Hofstede. I always say his name wrong, so apologies to any Dutch speakers. And Dave Marquet, the guy who wrote Turn the Ship Around. This is about reducing the distance between the people who make the decisions and the people who do the work. You want to move more of that decision-making authority to the people who do the work. That's where the knowledge is, that's where the information is. We want to move authority to where the information is, where the work is done, and stop moving authority to information and move authority to information and not information to authority. And as I said to one of my clients a couple of weeks ago, I'm on a mission to rid the world of status reports. There is no need for PowerPoint status reports and spending every Friday or Monday morning creating some report. You spend millions of dollars on tools that have dashboards. Why are the executives not reading the dashboards? There's a behavior issue. So leaders fix the environment, not the people. They make it safe to fail and don't add stress. And they tune the level of control based on the level of competency and clarity. And this is from the same research from the Dutch professor and from the work by Dave Marquet on intent-based leadership. If you want to give more control to your people, you want to give them more authority, more autonomy to make decisions, you need to make sure they have the right competency. If they don't have the right competency, you've failed in some way to train them, to skill them, to give them the appropriate competency. And then clarity, the right thing to do. Do they know how to make the right decision? And if they don't, we need to mentor them, guide them, coach them, support them. And if we're not doing these things, then you're not going to get that agility in the organization. And then we need to rid ourselves of bureaucracy, these endless review boards, these endless checkpoints, compliance madness, where every time you want to do something, move software to the next step, it has to go through a review process, a review board, or something of that nature. Red tape, endless red tape. And this leads to groupthink. This is back to your HIPPO, your highest paid person's opinion. You know, those meetings you're in where they say you all agree and you go, yes, absolutely. Those types of meetings, that's groupthink, where you just listen to the most important person's opinion. And then the next thing I talk about a lot is weak signals. If you're familiar with the work of Clay Christensen, The Innovator's Dilemma, so I work with a lot of very large organizations, the ones that find it very difficult to use any of these agile techniques. And what I've been hearing from venture capitalists is that they are actually using complexity thinking now and complexity science to study large organizations to look for the weaknesses, look for the gaps that they're not exploiting, and they're funding the startup businesses to exploit those gaps because these large organizations can't pivot and change quickly enough, and that's what we might call business agility. So that's a bit about constraints. What about pseudoscience? Because Agile is full of pseudoscience. So, pseudoscience, if you don't understand the word, is science that is not real. It's made up science. But it sounds really scientific, so people believe it. So, there's a thing I learned recently called SANE, the seductive allure of neuroscience explanations. And apparently the research, and it's actually published research, says adding a picture of a brain and using neuroscience terminology has been found to convince people that would otherwise be skeptical of the information being presented. Here's an example. On the left, we have an expert. The expert claims that this agile behavior happens because subjects have trouble switching their point of view to consider what someone else might know, mistakenly projecting their own knowledge onto others. That's what the expert might say. Here's the neuroscience version of that. And look, there's a picture of a brain. So, brain scans indicate that this agile behavior happens because of the frontal lobe brain circuitry known to be involved in self-knowledge. Subjects have trouble switching their point of view to consider what others might know, mistakenly blah, blah, blah. You just insert some neuroscience-y sounding words in a picture of a brain and people believe you. This is the type of stuff a lot of the agile folks are doing. Like this, cognitive load theory. You have to look at the picture for the subtleties in there. I'll help you out. So, and this is a quote from the paper. Closer analysis reveals some fundamental conceptual problems with the theory. Various generalizations of empirical findings become questionable because the theory allows different contradicting possibilities to explain some of the empirical results. But this is what they do. They write books. They use some neuroscience-sounding research to prove that what they're telling you is true. And then you've got the old one from the Agile world. You just need to get the Agile mindset. Mindsets are pseudoscience. There is absolutely no evidence. In fact, there's evidence to the contrary that mindsets cannot be shared amongst individuals. A mindset is considered your worldview, and you set your mindset by your nature, your nurture, your upbringing, your education, your experiences, not by being told you just need to get the Agile mindset. What we do have is attitude, a feeling or opinion about something or someone. Attitude is something that you can put in place. The boxes stopped working. Oh, there we go. He's reset my timer, bless him. Edit that bit out. So, how you doing? You're all very quiet. Let's talk about bullshit, because, it might be a bit of fun. So, this comes from David Graeber. He's a professor no longer with us. He was a Harvard business professor, very famous guy, wrote this book, Bullshit Jobs. And he talked about a lot of fake jobs in the government and industry. So I started looking at what a definition of a bullshit job is. And it's a form of paid employment that is so completely pointless, unnecessary, or pernicious that even the employee cannot justify its existence, even though, as part of the conditions of employment, the employee feels obliged to pretend that this is not the case. You want to be an agile coach? Change your LinkedIn headline. You know, this type of thing. So, I'm a flow guy, you might have noticed. There's no such thing as a flow advisor, a flow master, a flow coach, or a senior flow anything, but I guarantee you there are people out there now on LinkedIn calling themselves flow masters and flow coaches and flow gurus and things. Flow is a construct. It's like space or gravity. It just exists. It's a thing. It's not something we've just created. So let's look at these bullshit jobs. These are some of the words in English. Flunkies who serve to make their superiors feel important. Goons, like heavies, you know, the type of folks you see on a nightclub, are hired due to a dynamic of one-upmanship to compete with our rivals. So they bully people to get their rivals to lose the competition. Duct tapers temporarily fix problems that could be fixed permanently. What's the other one? Oh, box tickers who only create the appearance that is something useful is being done. Anybody heard of compliance? Governance, you know. Taskmasters that to manage or create more work for workers because you're not working hard enough as it is already, who don't need it. Excuse me for coughing down the microphone. So let's look at why Agile might be failing or struggling. Because the Agile business, unfortunately, wasn't really about helping companies transform, that word again, or change or evolve. It was about selling you certification. That's what the whole Agile business was about for many years. And some people have made hundreds of millions of dollars, and I do mean hundreds of millions of dollars selling certification. But most organizations desire change, but aren't designed to enable change. The next thing is Agile requires significant change. We know this, you're all Agile professionals, you understand the type of change that's necessary. Most leaders are not prepared to actually change because Agile's for the worker bees, it's for the minions, it's not for the executives, the leadership, HR, vendor management, procurement, finance, all these people. And leaders find every reason and excuse why it cannot be done. Most Agile is failing because the change it demands rarely occurs. Its roles are becoming fake or bullshit jobs, simply serving to be the next casualty of the change initiatives that originated in fads, so the latest fashion, FOMO, fear of missing out, or FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Well, we've got to be doing Agile. McKinsey tell us we have to be doing Agile. Hopefully they're not a sponsor of this event. So we've got some challenges here, and then we get this. You've seen this Agile deja vu? You're a program manager, so you become a release train engineer. You're a project manager, so you become a product owner. These types of things. And this is what's happening. But what the bullshit jobs thing comes because we created all these roles. Scrum masters, product owners, you know, Agile coaches have emerged and all this type of thing. And then we employ somebody to roll out a framework or an approach. And then we say, no, we won't change for that. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. So we create all these great people who've become Scrum Masters, and I know many of them who've lost their jobs recently as everybody started reducing their Agile contingent of employees. But they employ these people, and then they don't let them actually do the job they're employed to do. And that is a fake or a bullshit job. That's the definition. And then we've got this, incentives, with managers are incentivized to select problems that affect their bonus, not to select problems that actually affect the organization and promote the improvement in the organization. And this is a really hot topic in America, how people are incentivized. There's books written on these topics. But these are all the things that unless we actually solve, you're not going to get this transformational approach within your organization. You just have a few people doing Scrum, doing a bit of software development, a few cool kids doing extreme programming and some DevOps stuff. But the majority of the organization isn't going to change because leaders favor outsourcing the problem to a major PowerPoint development house rather than embracing and leading the required change by actively participating and being engaged. And then you end up with this, this is a statement that was misattributed to Peter Drucker. He never actually said it. But any innovation in a corporation will stimulate the corporate immune system to create antibodies that destroy it. So you roll out this new way of working, and guess what? Everybody starts to attack it. So what are we going to do about this? This is the stuff I'm now doing with a lot of companies. There's nothing wrong with Scrum. I use Scrum all the time, and I was one of the people who worked with Jeff Sutherland for a while, trying to develop Scrum at scale in its early days. So nothing wrong with those patterns. But then we've got things like this. Work as imagined versus work as done. So your bosses think it looks a bit like this. I assume you all know it looks a bit like that. And the first thing I ask leaders when I go in is, what's the problem? What's the problem you think you're trying to solve? Why did you buy SAFe, or why did you use agile methods and techniques? What was the problem you were trying to solve? Usually it's go faster and save money, which is the wrong reason to implement them. And then they tell me, growth, time to market, costs are too high, staff or customer attrition is too high. And I tell them these are not problems. These are outcomes. They're results of how you do what you do. And I dig in a little bit more, and I sort of say, well, what's the problem? They go, people aren't buying our products. And they go, well, the solution is just to sell harder. Just go out there and work harder. That's all you need to do. So not understanding the problem prevents organizations from being able to plan work effectively and actually prioritize and select the correct methods that are necessary for the type of work that's being done. So, for instance, Scrum would be useless in the operating room. People would die. That's not the place you're going to use Scrum. Let's have a retrospective and think about how to improve with the next patient. That's not really how we would use that. So, the next question I ask them is, how do you do what you do? Do you know how you do what you do? Because unless you know how you do what you do, how are you going to change how you do what you do and make it better? And I'm talking to leaders at this point. And, what's the actual problem that needs to be solved? Because if you don't really understand the problem and you just go implementing solutions, then you're going to get a result that wasn't expected, unintended consequences. And the other thing I ask them is, where do you do your work? This is me working on a production line a couple of years ago. I was called in to help a colleague of mine in a turnaround. So I'm an IT guy. I've spent my life in IT. But this is me on the production line learning how to pack corn, because I needed to understand what the problem was with the processes we were examining to look at so I could help them actually solve the problem, help the people on the line solve the problem. And later on in this same visit, I put management on the line. I put the CEO up here on this platform. He was terrible, because genuinely it was terrible. But that was how we affected change, because the leaders actually understood, whoa, so let's talk about chaos theory now. About 4 years before BC, before COVID, I was in Chicago in winter, which is not the place to go in winter while they get the lights back on. And I was just about to go on stage, give this presentation to 2,500 people, and everything went dead. And I stood on stage with different microphones switching between them. They put my sound, my video stuff through the sound system. When I cranked it up, it blew all the sound system because it was made for a big PA rig. And I was talking about complexity theory and the fact you couldn't predict these types of events. Nobody could have predicted that was going to happen. That's complexity theory. If you ever want an example of a complex adaptive system, you're now sitting in one, because there was no way that was predictable. So we could have drawn a Gantt chart, had a meeting about a meeting, done a PowerPoint deck, but we couldn't have predicted that was going to happen. So now you're starting to understand complexity, which is why when you start to buy certain things and implement certain methods and approaches that aren't designed for complex systems, you don't get the results you expect. Are the lights coming back on? Maybe. So, let's see if this still works. At least the projector's on. So, information flow is where most of the waste is hidden. Most of the problems are hidden in knowledge work. This thing we talk about when we talk about companies that you work in, organizations you work in, is predominantly knowledge work. I don't really like that phrase because it assumes that other types of work has no skills or knowledge, but this is what they call the type of work when we work in offices and IT. But if you don't understand how information is flowing in a system, you actually start to lose the areas you can gain. Now, you've probably heard of value stream mapping. The difference between a process map and a value stream map is a value stream map maps the information flows as well as the workflows. If it just maps workflow, it's just a process map. Now, why is this important? Because we need to make work visible. On the right are some real pie charts from a real client some years ago. And I talked to a lot of companies about this, whether you're using, planning poker points or, any hashtags, no estimates, people in the room, Monte Carlo simulation. Let's make something really, really complicated that really doesn't need to be because we look cool. Shit, we've lost more lights. This is awesome. This is like the oh shit part of the presentation. So I'll stand in front of here, then you can see me. Can you see me if I've got the subtle glow? It's going even darker. Look at this. Hey! We're getting some lights on. So, nothing. Oh, even better. You couldn't have planned this. That's better. Let's wait for the next great bang to go off. So, if you do not make work visible, and if you're using tools of demonic possession like Jira, version 1, Rally, whatever they call these things, if you're using these tools of, Satan worship, then you need to make sure that every piece of work is in the tool. Your meetings, all the stuff that's not concerned with the product backlog. So when you're pulling work into a sprint, what about all the stuff you do that's not in the backlog? Tech support, keep the lights on, run the business, interruptions from your boss. Can you just do this? Can you just do that? All this type of stuff. If you're not making that visible, then the boss is looking at your velocity and seeing that only 48% of the work you're doing is new stuff. Here's a bunch of other stuff that isn't being counted. So next time you're having a conversation with your boss and complaining about your capacity to get work done, make sure you can show them where the work is going, where does time go. This is really easy to do. Your Scrum Masters should be doing this every sprint using Excel. And if you want to know how many meetings, if you add up the number of hours you're spending in meetings, this is special stuff for Scrum Masters, add up all the hours you're spending in meetings, look at the total capacity of the team you're measuring, you can get a rough guess of these meetings equal this many points. Then you can sort of say all these meetings are eating 20% of our velocity. I'm not talking about the standard meetings in Scrum, I'm talking about all this other stuff you have to do. And this is what we do to find the waste. Here's lead time, the total time taken to deliver the work from the customer order to customer receipt. The overall time the customer waits. Business people call this time to market. Lead time, time to market, same thing. So here we've got a bunch of work that adds value to the process. Here we've got a bunch of work that adds no value but you can't avoid it. Compliance, governance, SOX compliance, regulatory, legal stuff. Here's got a bunch of stuff that you just do because you've always done it. Meaningless, needless work, you do it because it's the stuff you've always done. This is where the money is, by the way, and then all this other stuff is waiting. Why work is idle, waiting for meetings, waiting for approvals, waiting for governance, waiting for a vendor to finish their piece of work, waiting for another team. We spend our lives waiting. And the purpose of value stream mapping, according to my friend John Shook, is to design a simple system. So the first thing you should be doing is understanding how your system works. From end to end, how do you do what you do? Going to where the work is done, truly understanding it, and mapping that. And understanding where the constraints in the system are, where are the bottlenecks, where are the challenges that cause you problems in delivery. I have a phrase, if you want to get agile, first get lean. So you need to learn to be lean practitioners, not just changing your LinkedIn headline to Lean Agile Practitioner. Actually understand what lean means and then get really lean before you start worrying about this agility, because this agility will come if you start eliminating these things. And that in manufacturing, the greatest weight has always been considered overproduction. But I think the greatest waste everywhere else is waiting. So here's a simple value stream definition for you. A value stream contains all the people, machines, technology, and skills needed to complete the end-to-end product or service delivery, from customer needs to customer outcomes. That's a value stream. And they sometimes call those agents in the system. But this includes the business, because a lot of technology people take orders from the business but don't collaborate with the business. And then if you go into a cross-organizational environment, we tend to do this. We tend to go and do some Lean Agile stuff with the techies. But we forget about all these people, so we've just sub-optimized the system. If you're a systems thinker, the first speaker talked about Peter Senge's work in the fifth discipline. It was mentioned briefly. But if you're a systems thinker, we need to optimize the whole system for flow, not just optimize by teaching a few techies how to do Scrum. How many people are doing Kanban? Let me have a look. I guarantee you're not. I'm a Toyota guy. You're definitely not doing Kanban. You're doing like what we call Andon. You're doing visual control, and it's a resource allocation system you're using. You're not actually using a full pull system. So here's a bit of fun for you. I gave my clients this. If you want a true pull system, you start at the end and you end at the start. Because demand flows upstream, fulfillment flows downstream. That's a pull system. What might this look like for software people? Well, we might start with somebody called the customer. First tenet of lean thinking, customer first promise, is customer first, 1946 Toyota. We might analyze their needs, and business analysis isn't a role, it's a skill, it's an activity. So we might do some analysis, and after we've done that, we might ask our customer, how do you know when we've delivered you what we want? And they might write down some bullet points. They've just written your acceptance criteria. Cool kids on the block who do XP stuff. Kent Beck fans in the audience somewhere. Good lads, see awesome folks over there. You might do acceptance test-driven development. So collaborating with your customer based on their needs, they'll write the acceptance criteria, which you now need to write code to pass. So the next thing you'll do is write some tests that will fail, but those tests are written to pass the acceptance criteria. This is called test-driven development. And then after that, you go write code. That's a true pull system for software. And the definition is really simple here. If you're using true Kanban, here we go again. I'm waiting for something to blow up out the stage or something. Or I thought Serbia was a safe country, yeah? That's what they told me. Anyway, so a Kanban pull system is one where only downstream teams or processes can add work to an upstream queue. Adding work further upstream is a push system. So if you're allocating work to teams here and pushing it down to subsequent processes, it is not Kanban. It is a push system, not a pull system. This is what you want to be doing if you want to be really, truly cool, but this takes an immense amount of effort to get working in organizations. So this is maybe what a cool organization might look like. You've got a value stream here, including the business with all the technology and all the skills and everything you need across here. Then you've got your DevOps implementation, if you've got a DevOps capability. And here is how we solve the horizontal cross-functional or shared services. We took in Toyota, we took the horizontal shared services organizations. Toyota is about 2,500 people in the USA. And what we did, instead of having one gigantic shared services organization, we broke it into smaller shared services and created cross-functional teams that were actually more like the sort of teams that Matt Skelton talks about in team topologies. This was a team that could support these types of functions, and we dedicated one of these teams to each value stream. I'll give you a little case study, and this is where we'll start to wrap up and we'll do some questions. I work a lot with a company you may be familiar with, Vodafone. And I'm working very much with their Irish arm, their Irish division at the moment. This is how we're doing things for them. So we've got a customer, and that's the first thing we start with. The most important person is the customer. Then we might have something like a chief product owner. It doesn't matter what you call these people, but somebody who's responsible for the profit and loss, the success of the product in the market, and all those sort of aspects. They will spend time working with the customer, doing lots of feedback, lots of sessions to define the things the customer might need. And we might put that in a backlog. Sound familiar? And it will be a properly prioritized backlog, only one number 1, one number 2, one number 3, not 57 high priority items, this type of thing. And then we might build a set of teams. We call this a multi-team system. You know, people like SAFe call it an agile release train. Scrum Org call it a nexus. There's lots of different words for these. The made-up Spotify method, call it a tribe, you know, this type of thing. And the Spotify method is made up. The people at Spotify said it's made up. But this is the key. 100% funded, 100% skilled, 100% of the time. No matrix management, no shared resources, everybody that we need, including vendors in 5 different locations, India, Egypt, Portugal, as well as the UK and Ireland's offices, they're all 100% dedicated 100% of the time and 100% funded for a year at a time. So none of this request for change nonsense going off. Then we'll have some team product owners, excuse me, depending on the scaling of this, how big this is, because this person can't do it all themselves, no matter what my friend Craig Larman will tell you in large-scale Scrum in less. It's all right having one single product owner, but that's a lot of work for one person if you've got 50 teams working on something. So we need some way to share that load. Then we've got this idea of the horizontal cross-functional team. So this is a smaller version of the shared services that I just talked about, dedicated to this group. And we may do this with vendors. This is something we sometimes do with a vendor to support this system. We'll put in some scaling approaches. These are Scrum at Scale approaches, but you can use any way you want. The key thing here is to foster communication, continuous communication between management and leadership. And here, the CEO solves impediments, and the CEO with her leadership team do an equivalent of a daily scrum once a week, a scaled daily scrum, to actually solve impediments that have gone through the organization. That's what I mean by engaged and participatory leadership. And this leadership action team, this is at vice president level, senior director level. And there we go, some of the words. So this is how excuse me, we are scaling organizations, but only when we have spent time to understand how they do what they do. We've mapped the organization in detail, understood where all the constraints were. We've then worked to eliminate the constraints, the handoffs, the dependencies, the meetings about meetings, the needless status reporting, and actually designed a system that works. And your system will be very much different to this system. This is only contextually based with this client. So I thought I'd do a Steve Jobs moment before we move to Q&A. There's one more thing, as long as everything stays on. Measure what matters. Too many people, excuse me, too many people are measuring too many things. I was with one client recently that have over 1,900 metrics that they're measuring in one of these tools of demonic possession. I'm getting possessed now, never mind anybody else. So let me just have a sweet. That's better. It's all the electrical explosions exciting me too much. So we measure 2 things. We measure time to market. That's how long it takes you to get the value to the customer, the concept to cash. We measure how efficiency the process is. SAFe call that flow efficiency. It's not a correct definition, and process cycle efficiency is the original definition. And here's the last thing I'll leave you with. Take a picture of that or scan the barcode. There is an article I wrote there which will help you understand what lean metrics are, how to correctly and properly use them, and how to actually measure what matters in organizations. That was the funnest thing I've ever done with all the interruptions and explosions. But that's the last slide. Where's my co-host that's going to come on and say some magical things? Anyway, thank you for listening. I appreciate you all. We can do some questions.
You know, you were the first one to mention Guy Fawkes.
Guy
and
Fawkes.
Fireworks
I
and
did
all sorts of
mention
stuff.
this.
And then you see what happened?
Yes.
You created all the, what we call
Yeah, you
kushlos.
see, I'm tempting fate.
So you have the questions here. And we are like 15 minutes away from lunch,
Okay, so
which
I'm
I
going to
think
talk
is
really
sufficient
fast
to
then,
go
yeah.
through the questions, and then we'll just do the final
All right.
wrap-up.
All right, first question. Are the issues you're pointing out too hard to fix on a short-term basis? What would be baby steps? Yeah, I mean, the thing is you can't boil the ocean. I mean, I work with companies that have got 7,000 to 10,000 employees, so you're not going to fix that overnight. I always tell people, start with an area which has some significance. So if you make some changes, it's noticeable and people care about it, but not so risky that if something goes wrong, it's not safe to fail and could cause catastrophic results in the company. So you should really pick somewhere that's discreet. And what we did with Vodafone, we picked about an area of about 100 people. And we actually studied how the system worked, and we started to work on removing the impediments and the dependencies and various other things. We renegotiated contracts with the vendors to allow them to work in the way we wanted them to work, and we ran it for 6 months as an experiment. And once that was proven successful, we've scaled it up now to many more people. So that's really, and yes, you can get rid of some of those things short term, but you need engaged leaders. If your leaders aren't fully engaged, fully participating, it will be tremendously difficult. Can we get this presentation? Yes, you'll get all the slides as a PDF, and I'll make it available through Agile Serbia so they can distribute it to all the attendees. It's gone back. Where's the questions gone? There we go. What is the least painful way or ways for a large organization which scaled Agile and created bullshit jobs to get on the right track? You need to go back and figure out what are the problems that you're trying to fix. What are the real problems? Not some synthetic made-up problem, but what are the real things that are actually hurting you? And they'll tell you things like time to market and things like that, costs and defects, technical debt, all these different things. And technical debt isn't a problem. It's the result of a bad decision. So you've got to remember that we created all these problems. So you first of all need to go back and say, what are the problems or what are the effects that we're feeling? And then go back and figure out what are the problems that are creating those effects, and then start allocating time to work on understanding why those problems exist. Where are we next? Our issues you are pointing out to, we've done that one. were the gods of Agile angry with you during the talk? As my friend Chris just asked. Well, I'll let you be the judge of that. Or are you in a bullshit job and don't like what you... I don't really get what Pedia's saying. You are in a bullshit job and you don't like it. If you're in a bullshit job and don't like it, what can you do? I've been given a lot of, just my opinion, I wouldn't call it advice, to a lot of Agile practitioners. In the US, there's been a decimation of Agile practitioners. There's a lot of people losing their jobs. And we're talking thousands of people. McKinsey fired all their Agile people. They're no longer selling Agile, and that came from an Agile person who worked for McKinsey I know very well. My advice is you are change practitioners. Probably before this Agile thing came along, those that are a bit older like me, you were doing other cool things. Whether you were software developers, technical people, scientists, or whether you were just in project management or change management. Over the lifespan of Agile, we talk about transformation, which is really the wrong word. For me, it's a continuous evolution. The whole digital transformation just meant updating old, out-of-date technologies, moving to new technologies, moving to new tech stacks. AI is just the migration to new technology. Love it or hate it, it's a thing. And the same with methods and tools and techniques and approaches. You know, we've moved away from some older project management type ways of working. We're moving into different ways of working. We will move into more different ways of working, and Agile will be a transition we made through to whatever we call it in the future. Now, agility will exist. But ultimately, if you're in this role as a person who feels they're in this trap where they've trained to do something, got a bunch of certification, and are struggling to find work in that, start using that. These are a set of skills I have, but I'm more than a Scrum Master. I'm more than a product owner, more than an Agile coach. I am a change agent. I understand change management, human factors, coaching, complex systems, distributed leadership, how to empower people, and start building your resume around that. Oh, and by the way, I know Scrum, and I've done a few of these scaling things. That's what you need to be selling yourself as, not as an Agile practitioner. That's my opinion. I may be right, I may be wrong. Is that all of them? Is it possible to form and eat a self-evolvement of the organization, or is it better to have external coaches to initiate leadership engagement? So the executive action team is a concept that Jeff Sutherland came up with. When I was at 3M, we started talking about leadership action teams. We had this thing called the Ninja Squad, which were directors that solve problems. My opinion is that executives need coaching. Whether that's an external coach or an internal coach depends on the type of organization and the context. But executives need to be coached. They need to understand why they need to do the things we're asking them to do. They also need support, because a lot of executives have never done the work. A lot of executives running companies have never written a line of code, never run a test case, never written a use case, never done business analysis. So they don't have the skills that a lot of you have. So these are the things that we need to coach executives on, the why. Because normally when they understand the why, if they really want to solve the challenges, they will lean in. And then things like executive action teams, leadership action teams become possible. And for those unfamiliar with the concept, you just get a group of executives who represent the people doing the work, and they meet on a regular basis to solve problems. That's the concept of these action teams. They are there to resolve impediments. Daily Scrum, Scrum of Scrums, leadership action team, once a week executive action team, which is where the big bosses are, solving things that everybody else can't solve. The idea is to solve things quickly. Anything else out there? I think we've done them all. Oh, is going agile for a large company a realistic desire? You see, the thing is, I don't think there's anything such as going agile. I think all these things are made up by people who are selling certificates. I think there is business agility. There is product agility. Business agility, how fast can the business respond to the Elon Musks of this world, the disruptive innovators? How quickly can they change direction, pivot, make a decision? If it take, the best test for a business agility is see how long it takes to get a new laptop in your company. So that tells you how agile the company is. Why we pay people, thousands of dollars a year, thousands of euros or whatever, or millions of dinar probably when you convert the currency, and then they need a laptop that costs 1,000 euros, and they spend 6 months arguing the business case for it. They don't trust you, obviously. So, these are the types of things. But the reality of it is a large organization is a very complex system. It's like a city. I was in Istanbul airport yesterday on my way here. That place is bigger than most cities. And so when you think about implementing agile techniques or agile systems, you have to start to think, not every part of that organization is going to benefit from the things we're experts in. They're going to need different tools, different techniques, different approaches. And so this idea of an organization going agile is the wrong phrase. Do we want business agility, the ability for the business to change quickly, make decisions quickly? Yes. Do we want product agility? How fast can you bring out new features, functions, capabilities? If you're in the mobile phone business, if it takes you 2 years to bring out new features, you're no longer in the cell phone business, the mobile phone business. You've got to respond rapidly. Then you've got team agility. How willing and able are you as team members to respond and collaborate together and find new ways of working to respond to the customer's changing needs and requirements? And at the individual level, how willing are you to change your behaviors individually to support your teammates and to support the organization? So this agility thing is emergent depending on the context, and you become agile, but it doesn't mean you have to use Scrum or less or SAFe or anything else to become agile. So the idea of becoming agile is not tied to frameworks or methodologies. It's only tied to the ways we behave and act within the organization, within the context. I think we're done. Are we done? 56 seconds left. What else have we got? Nothing. That's it. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Amazing. Did you specify which stage you'll be speaking
later? Oh,
it's
the blue stage at 4:15. If you want to come listen to some dubstep and go batshit crazy, maybe win a few prizes to take home that I bought all the way from.
Prizes?
Yeah, free shit.
Oh, good. From Texas?
Yes. Well, sort of. They came from America, yeah.
Oh, good. Yes. And will there be enough shit mentioned, like sufficient number of times?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I was thinking somebody will take the sheet and start sticking numbering the number.
I think we should post the shit hashtag all over LinkedIn. Just a thought.
Okay, if you start, I'll follow. Let's put it that
Okay.
way. Good,
Good.
good, good. Thank you very
No,
much.
thank
It's
you
been
very
amazing.
much. Thank you.